You ever meet someone who just gets how the body works? While the rest of us are debating whether stretching before bed counts as a workout, they're out here optimizing human function like it's their life mission or something. Well, that's today's guest. Dr. Mike Patten isn't just a chiropractor. He's a second generation healer, in my opinion, who grew up watching chiropractic care in action. He took things to another level. At Blue Waters Health Center, he's not just cracking backs, he's cracking the code on root cause medicine, blending functional healthcare with chiropractic to actually fix what's going on underneath the surface. Dr. Mike, welcome to Beyond Adjustments. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so this is exciting, man. Can't wait to get into it. We're going to dive into Dr. Mike's journey from growing up in a chiropractic family to revolutionizing how he approaches his health and the health of his patients. We'll talk about how functional medicine and chiropractic care work together, how he built a thriving practice, and what the future of patient care looks like. So if you've ever wondered how chiropractic care can do away with more than just kind of the pain that you're feeling and not just be a way of fixing your back, or how to build a practice that actually makes an impact, stick around. Because this is an episode packed with gold. I guarantee it. Cue that music. Dr. Mike, welcome to Beyond Adjustments. Thank you again for making the time to spend an hour or so here with me to really educate our audience with some of the things that you've learned, things to do, things not to do. So again, welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I always enjoy a little longer format to discuss with people, just to talk and interact, especially about chiropractic and healthcare.
Wonderful. I love it. All right. So let's start at the beginning. You grew up in a chiropractic household, right? Am I right in saying that? Perfect.
Correct.
So was this always kind of the dream, or did you go through that phase where you thought about rebelling and becoming like an accountant instead, or something like that?
Well, actually, I was a high-level athlete in high school. I had a scholarship to play Division II basketball, which I didn't get a lot of playing time on the court, but I played for about 2.5 years before I walked away, realizing that I was going to be a doctor and not a professional basketball player. But prior to that, I was actually going to go into computer engineering and make video games because I loved playing video games and strategy and things like that with them. And so that's what I was going to do until I got into my freshman year at North Dakota State University and was in Calculus 2. And took a test and I scored, it was like 39% or something, but that happened to be a B in the class because it was so hard.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I can't handle this much failure. I'm out. I'm not doing this. And I walked away. And interesting enough, it was because I was playing basketball that I transferred to Minnesota State Moorhead. And because I was playing basketball, the coaches made one call, got me into a human anatomy class I shouldn't have been in. And I got into that class and got an A in the class and loved it, and ended up going into healthcare and really just kind of that was kind of the steps that it took. So.
Okay. So I imagine like growing up around chiropractic gave you like a front row seat, right? To both what I consider miracles and the challenges of patient care, right? So what's the biggest lesson, I would say, because you were in practice with your father, you did also watch your father do this as well. So what's the biggest lesson you would say that your dad taught you about running a practice?
Well, growing up, I didn't pay much attention to it. I mean, but chiropractic was always just like, that's just how we grew up. You didn't feel well, you got adjusted. That was just normal for me. As far as how to run a practice, that came later on when I was in practice with them. And one of his common sayings he said was, take care of the patients and the patients will take care of you.
Mhm.
And that one was always one that hit home big time because it was like, look, do whatever you can to help that patient and quit blaming the patient when they don't get better.
Yeah.
And look at it
Yeah.
like if the patient doesn't get better, you're the doctor. Figure out what you can do to connect with them to help them.
Right.
You're going to help everyone? No, you're not going to help everyone. But you're the doctor. Figure out a way to do it. And I've always
Yeah.
that's always stuck with me. Take care of your patients and they'll take care of you.
Tell me about your experience with the practice. Because if I remembering correctly, you mentioned to me that you were in practice with your father and your brother. Am I remembering that
Yes.
correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Tell me a little bit about
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2009 and my brother graduated in 2008. So we're about 18 months apart in age. And we graduated a year apart from each other, chiropractic school. We're a year apart in school, growing up all the way through. And so we both had went back to Minnesota and my dad had a practice there. He started in that practice in 1980. And how he got there is a wild story too because he started in Redwood Falls, Minnesota, and was the first associate of Dr. Lee and Dr. Furr, the two inventors of activator and the activator
Okay.
technique, if you've ever heard of them.
I have. Yep.
And so it was my father that was their first associate and really learned a lot of practice stuff from them. And from there, he had bought the practice in Litchfield, where I'm from. He went there and he built a new office. And my brother and I had both went back there. And for all intents and purposes, I planned on being there my whole life, and until I realized I hated the cold. So it's time to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. So then when you finally decided to create, your own practice outside of, the cold, and you wanted to go to a warmer, climate, what was your vision? Like how did you want to set yourself apart from the traditional chiropractic offices out there?
Yeah. So my first thought was, hey, it's cold. I don't want to be here forever. I don't want to retire in the cold. And so it's like, let's go someplace warm. And so now I'm in Sarasota, Florida, which I absolutely love. I love Florida. It's nice. It's warm. It's sunny. There's beaches.
Sure.
But when I started to think about it, it was like, how can I set up and create a place, a health center that's really looking at a total person? Because when I started into practice, you'd have the person you come in and they'd have a headache and you'd adjust them and they get better. And it was great. I'm amazing. And the next person comes in, they have a headache. You adjust that C1 again, just like you did the previous one. Everything they presented with was the exact same. And they get off the table. I'm no better. And you're thinking, well, what in the world? So the next step is logically to go into the nutrition, and then it's to go into whatever areas you can to try to help that patient. And what I'm developing here, because it's only been 2 years so far, is I'm developing a way to look at a total person, kind of their mind, their nutrition, their physical structure, to figure out where that problem is, and then to help them deal with that problem.
Mm. Got it. So, all right, I'm going to throw a little bit of a challenge question at you. So, looking back, what was the hardest challenge you faced in, building your career and kind of what you got through it?
The first thing that comes to mind is admitting that I don't know.
Mm.
And so I'll expand on that. You come up to a patient and you have no idea what to do. And a story that sticks out of really what set me on the trajectory where I am now. It was my first year of practice, between my first and second year of practice, and I had a patient come in and I still remember it clear as day. He had lower back pain, right side, right over the sacroiliac joint on the right. And now it'd be super easy to fix. But at the time I was struggling. I adjusted him about 3 times and he had no change. So I went back. It was his 4th visit. We went back and got my father. And I said, hey, Dad, can you come look at this guy? He's not getting better. I can tell he's frustrated, and I don't know what to do. And my dad walks in the room, talks to the guy for a second, finds out they're both kind of in the military about the same time, lays him down on the table, says, oh, there it is, adjusts him. The guy gets up and says, I'm better. He's like, holy cow, that feels better. I don't have any discomfort. Like, what in the world did you do? And so we go back to my office and we're sitting there talking and I'm like, what'd you do? He goes, well, I used the Thompson technique. I'm like, well, that's what I used. And he goes, well, I found a T12. I'm like, that's what I found. He goes, well, I adjusted it anterior, the A to P adjustment. I'm like, that's what I did. I sat there and I watched you do it. And it was everything I did the first three adjustments. Why didn't he get better with you and not with me? And he's like, well, you really didn't have a good answer for me. And it was because he couldn't really articulate why that patient got better that set me on a journey to figure out why chiropractic works when it does and why it doesn't work when it doesn't work. And to understand that mechanism so you can, but it's without saying, I don't know, that kind of path can never happen.
Got it. Understood. So, yeah, I think as far as admitting that you don't know something, it doesn't matter what profession you're in, even in your own personal life, admitting that you don't know something for some people could be pretty hard. But in the chiropractic profession or just healthcare in general, I think it's important that you actually admit that you don't know, only because it's really for the betterment, for the care of that patient. So I love that that's, what you talked about, because there's practitioners and physical therapists and all these different types of professions out there, and chiropractic included, will claim that they can help no matter what, right? And I always say this, like if a doctor says I can help you no matter what, that's like borderline malpractice to me, because it's like you need to have the right team around you. For you, it was your father. Maybe it was, it doesn't matter, right? So the fact that you're admitting that you don't know something, and it is probably the best step that you can take in giving them the best help. So I love that answer. So thank you for that, and thank you for admitting that you admitted that you didn't know something. So that's awesome. That's good stuff.
Well,
Okay, so yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, like, because on a mental plane, and this is part of the journey, is I had to go through and learn a lot of psychology and how that brain works. And when you
for sure.
try to make up an answer and it's not true, you immediately stop any creative thought to find an answer. But the
Yeah.
moment you can say that I don't know,
Yeah.
that allows kind of that spirit within you, that innate intelligence, to start to go crazy and try to find a solution for you and kind of bring that into your life. And so it's so powerful to say, I don't know, because now you have the opportunity to actually figure out the answer.
Yeah. Instead of stumbling and just trying to think of the first thing you can think of, and then it would be the wrong thing in some cases. But yeah, I love that. That's good. It's good. All right, let's talk about what makes your practice different. So a lot of people hear chiropractic and just think about back pain. At least I was one of those people for a long time. But you take it beyond that. What or why did you decide to integrate functional medicine into your approach?
Well, there's a number of reasons. One of the reasons is we don't actually compete with each other as chiropractors, although many don't see it that way. And when you start to understand we don't compete, you also have to find out, like, what makes you tick and what brings you joy when you're practicing. And for some people, it's just a low back, and they love to get they love to get all their different machines out and put people in traction, and people get better doing that and they get great results. And that's great for them. And I love those docs. And for some people, it's an upper cervical technique and they only want to deal with upper cervical stuff and headaches and vertigo. And that's fantastic, but that's not me. And so once you find out, like, really what makes you tick, and for me, it's like really getting people to deal and face their junk. But in order to do that, in order to help them heal at the deepest levels, I had to set up a clinic that was so constructed that they knew from the beginning that I was going to get into all areas of their life, like pretty much no questions, like off topic.
Yeah.
And so it gets set up with all my stuff's electronic. And so their intake forms are electronic, and they get like 500 questions that are all about their body, all about their symptoms they've had in the past. And it breaks it down into different systems and their history and what they've had in their family history, and surgeries and medication, all these different things. And then there's another section of it that comes that's really focused at their personality. Like if they get angry, if they have any sort of depression type stuff, and even their biological urges to self-expression or self-preservation or a herd or gregarious urge, like they like to be around people. So they're starting to see that I'm asking deeper questions than just, does your lower back hurt, but really getting at who that person is. And then when they come in for that first visit, and as I examine them, they also get a 24-hour integrated urinalysis panel. I call it the IUP. And I stole that term from my buddy, Dr. Sean McCaffrey. He's the one that came up with it. But that integrated urinalysis panel, what that does is it shows how that body's handling stress, but it also gives me a window into that person's diet and lifestyle as far as nutrition and medications and all that's concerned, because I'm running a test. And it's not something that their medical community is going to run. And no other chiropractors are running around here either. There's some out there that run it because of my unique training with Dr. Howard Loomis Jr. and Dr. Sean McCaffrey teaching me how to understand and read this test. And it reads more like a story. Now I can take their body and I have all of this history and kind of a personality, what they are. But then I have this integrated urinalysis panel that's giving me a picture as to how, they're breaking down food and how they're eliminating waste. And you can correlate it back into their spine and give a logical reason as to why we need to treat lower back or between the shoulders and the thoracic region, or why we need to adjust an atlas. And we can see and play wrong with that, but also just ask questions like, why do you hate your job? Or quit eating so much sugar.
I love your intake process. I'm sure some find it annoying, just for the record, just because you probably have a ton of questions, but I love it because you're being thorough. But that said, and even with your IUP, I'm sure a lot of patients will come in with, more questions. But and specifically, and I'm kind of thinking how I would think about it, specifically around kind of functional medicine. So what's like the biggest common misconception people have when they hear functional medicine?
Well, first we need to define terms. That's one of the biggest issues, because I saw someone on a Facebook post the other day down here in Sarasota ask for an integrative, functional, holistic doctor. And I'm like, I don't even know what they're really asking for.
Yeah.
Because we're just taking terms and throwing it together.
Yeah.
And this is the way I work with a lot of patients too. I'm like, hey, look, we got to define our terms and we got to establish a starting point before we could ever really get to where we're going. If we don't have a starting point, we can't get there. And so we look at integrative. And to me, an integrative, you go, okay, so integrative, are you talking about integrative with other doctors? Or are you talking about integrative in an approach where you're using different supplements? Like what is integrative?
Modalities or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And then we look at functional, and I'm going, okay, are you talking about functional in a function of the limbs and function of the tissue and more of like a PT type sense? Or are we talking functional more internally with our organs and our systems, making sure they're functioning properly? Because you can be a functional doctor and prescribe drugs, and you can be a functional doctor and prescribe supplements. And so it really depends on what a person's getting at. And then when I look at holistic, I define holistic different than functional. Functional, I'm saying that person's looking at the function of, say, a thyroid gland. Holistic, I'm saying you're looking at the thyroid gland's off, but what is that in relation to the rest of the body?
Right. I'm sure they weren't thinking all that.
No, they were not. They are not. But I always like to define the terms, because now it gives a clear picture of what they're actually looking for.
Right. But if somebody was looking for a functional medicine doctor, what's an inaccurate view of what that is?
When they're looking for a functional medicine, typically they're looking for someone to tell them what's going on with their thyroid or liver. Those are usually their two main ones. Or they have an issue with their bowel or stomach. Usually you get into gastrointestinal stuff and hormone stuff when it's functional. That's just my take on it, what I've seen.
Yeah.
And they're looking for someone to improve the function of that organ or that problem that they have. That's what they're looking for. So a lot of them will go to a doctor thinking I'm getting a functional doctor that's going to look at my thyroid gland. And typically that person is going to, if they're a medical route, they're going to give them drugs for that thyroid to function normally, which would make sense if that's what you're using. Now, if they go to a lot of practitioners, what's becoming in vogue now is to have multiple different supplements in order to get that thyroid functioning normally. And so is there a wrong approach? I don't know if there's a wrong one. It's just the definition can be so broad. It really depends on what the person's looking for.
Got it. Got it. It can kind of cover a gamut of things as well.
Oh yeah. There's a huge kind of wide swath.
Got it. So I guess that brings me to a question about different things that people struggle with. So you mentioned thyroid, issues, liver issues, whatnot, right? We're dealing with things like, chronic inflammation, maybe fatigue, gut issues, autoimmune disorders, like all these different things that people are dealing with, which could essentially be under that umbrella of how you could approach dealing with those things. But what would you say that the maybe 1-2 common root causes that you see in most of these type of cases?
So that's the thing. A lot of people are looking for a specific root cause for a thing. There's only 3 ways we get sick. There's only 3. One is going to be physical, where you have some sort of trauma come into it. So say you hit your head or you slip and fall. That's a trauma to that tissue that caused the problem. The second one is nutritional or chemical. Some chemical, something came into the body, whether it's the food that you ate, whether it's environmental toxins, whether it's legal or illegal drugs, consuming too much sugar, that comes into the body and it starts to create muscle contraction, distortion, pull on the spine. The last one is emotional. Something happens in your life. Your kids aren't listening. Your job is stressful. It's tax time right now, or getting close to tax time with this recording. So you're looking at your taxes, wondering if you have the money. You may be on one aisle or the left or right in a political discussion, and that causes stress. And so you look at all these things and they evoke stress on your body, and the emotions will pull on that. And that creates misalignments, that creates subluxations that need to be corrected. Now, the general rule of thumb is 80% emotional, 10% nutritional, 10% physical. And so when you look at that kind of breakdown, you go, okay, well, then how does this really create problems? Well, we have 4 physical laws of our body. And say you're someone that eats a poor diet, you're violating the law of nourishment. When we violate the law of nourishment, it creates muscle contraction. Now that's going to make you more tired, but you're not going to sleep as well because that digestive system's trying to work. So you start violating the law of recuperation because you're either sleeping way too much or not enough or not getting good rest. And you're usually not moving when your diet's off and you're not sleeping well. So now you violate the law of movement, and that can slow down or speed up the bowels. And now you violated the law of the law of sanitation. So I always go back to these 4 laws. I'll figure out what category that person's in, which of these 4 laws they violated.
Yeah.
Start getting them to follow these laws and adjust their spine and watch that healing process take over.
Right. That's pretty cool. I've never heard it put that way. I love your approach. And I kind of had an idea about those kind of 3 different, you mentioned the trauma, the nutrition, the emotion, an idea, but I've never kind of put it in like 3 buckets like that. That's interesting. So I appreciate you kind of clarifying that. So you're big on advanced diagnostics, right? You talked about, technology, all that fun stuff. What test or tool that you use that might have completely changed the way you treat patients?
Well, the IUP is the big thing that sets me apart because it gives me a window. It gives me a 1-day window into that person's life on how they're eating food, how they're digesting food, how they're breaking it down. And that comes with a story because I just had a guy in here yesterday. It's the second time I saw him this week because he had lower back pain. It was right into his left gluteus and it was radiating down the back of his leg. Everything that we did every test that I did, every orthopedic test, everything else showed that it is a disc injury, herniated disc, lower back. He's had previous history of disc injuries. He has MRIs who had disc injuries. He had the same thing 10, 15 years ago. As I'm treating him, I'm like, this isn't responding like a disc injury. And when we got the results of the IUP back, I looked at him and I said, so you're not doing a really great job controlling your diabetes. I can see that you're urinating a lot of glucose out. But the other thing is, there's two tests on it. One is the volume, how much they output, and the other one's called specific gravity. And to understand specific gravity and how it means, it's if you've ever made Kool-Aid before and you put too much Kool-Aid in there and you don't have enough water, it doesn't taste good. Well, if you put a lot of water and not enough Kool-Aid, that doesn't taste well either. It's this up and down kind of volume changes that how much comes out changes that too. I didn't explain it the best right there. I should have used a different analogy, but
No, that makes sense. Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense.
And so when you have a little bit of volume, you're going to have a lot more Kool-Aid in there. So if a person goes to urinate and they don't drink a lot of water, there's a little bit of volume, there should be a lot of stuff in there. Well, he had a normal volume, but not very much stuff in there with a lot of glucose. And so that should be way up there. So I'm like, look, you're stressing the crap out of your kidneys. These things aren't able to do their job. And when you start to correlate where do the kidneys innervate at, it's right around T12 in that area. And then you start grabbing what other muscles are in that area. Well, immediately you go to quadratus lumborum and a psoas muscle. You get in the front and the back of that, and that's going to pull up on that hip, especially on that side. So immediately it's like, dude, we got to change your diet, but we're going to help you and support those kidneys. And that was Monday. He changed his diet over the weekend. He came in Monday, felt a little better. Came in yesterday. We put an enzyme to help start strengthening his body up. He came in yesterday. Goes, pain's virtually gone.
Wow. That's awesome, man.
And
So the IUP, go ahead.
Yeah. And it's because we could see that on the IUP, that it's the stress on the kidneys creating that muscle contraction because he's eating poorly. So I can adjust him all day and it's not changing it.
So the IUP, is it like a proprietary thing? Like, is this something that other DCs can learn and get their hands on? Like, how does that work?
Absolutely. So the IUP actually comes from Dr. Howard Loomis Jr.'s work, and that's through the Loomis Institute. And they teach how to read it, although I don't believe they teach how to read it as well as they used to back when I learned it. And I learned a lot from talking with Dr. Sean McCaffrey. He's the one that owns the lab. It's McCaffrey Labs out of Springfield, Illinois. And him and I we had tons of discussions, and we go through it and look at it, analyze it. Why does it show up this way? Why do things happen like this? And what does this mean when we see this? And it is through running thousands of these things that I've gained experience doing it. Now, if someone's like, hey, that sounds cool, I want to incorporate it in, they're always free to call me and be like, hey, what do I do here? I'll tell you. I have no problem helping someone out. But it's through that you can see this is where the stress on the body is. And until I get this individual to change his diet, it's going to take a lot of adjustments in order to get this settled down, because he's literally feeding the bear by eating just too many carbohydrates and too much sugar.
That's all. The fact that you're offering your help just kind of tells me where your heart is, man. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure DCs will reach out to you now they're seeing this. So, but a question more related to kind of your everyday folks, right? Like myself. And I like to ask this of all the chiropractors, because I feel like if people are kind of tracking this and watching the episodes, they can get something from each one. But if you could build just one kind of daily habit to improve, I would say, long-term health, what should that be, or what could that be? Just one.
Concentration.
Yeah. Elaborate a little. What do you mean by that?
I knew it would be more. I knew it would need more elaboration. All right. So concentration, and all right, let's see how to explain this. So our innate intelligence is that subconscious mind that's within us. It takes 33 seconds for something to get implanted in there and play out in your body or within your life. If you can concentrate and hold your attention, you can prevent all the crappy ideas and all the things in your world from getting in there and disrupting your life.
Mm.
If you can concentrate, you can also put in all the things that you want in your life and create health and vibrancy in your body and in your world. Concentration is by far the most key thing to any health thing that's out there. Now, if you want a good way to learn how to concentrate, get a white piece of paper, put it up on your desk and stare at it and try to think of nothing for 33 seconds.
That's
When you
hard.
first do it, you'll make it to 3.
Yeah, that's hard. All right.
So,
I'm going to try that.
yeah. Yeah. Because what happens is whenever someone has like I'll take an example. I had a young lady come in and she had a lot of sinus trouble and they did an operation. And when they did this operation, the doctor happened to pierce her sinus cavity right here into her eye. And it caused her entire eye socket to collapse. And she went in to have to go get surgery and they put plates in all around her eye. And so now her eye's a little bit different shape. And she started to develop a lot of neck trouble and upper back trouble. Now, when she came in, we were talking about, and I had adjusted her a couple times, and we haven't had a lot of change. And so when I started to inquire about her daily habits and routines, she told me that every day she wakes up, she looks in the mirror and she says, man, I look ugly because of the way the eye looks. Now, her concentration is focused on how ugly she looks and then creates muscle contraction. So I can adjust her every single day and it's going to be the exact same subluxation complex until I get that idea out of there. So what I did is I looked at her and I said, well, it's better to be ugly than stupid. You can fix ugly, you can't fix stupid.
Okay. And then,
so she wakes up and she starts laughing, thinks it's great. And I'm like, look, if someone's stupid, there's no hope for them. If you're ugly, yeah. And I told her, I said, look, you can go on a date with someone. If they're ugly, they can have a great personality. You still want to be around them. But if they're stupid, you don't want to be around someone that's stupid, no matter how good they look.
true. Very
So
true.
then she laughs about it, thinks it's great. The next morning she wakes up. What's the first thing she does? She goes to the mirror. She looks in there, goes, man, I look ugly. What's the next thing that follows? But at least I'm not stupid. Guess what happens to her neck? All the chiropractors she's been going to for the last 2 years and couldn't get it to hold. It starts to hold. She came in here this last week telling me how much she got her life back.
Wow.
She can actually exercise again. She actually feels good again. She wants to go out and go on dates again, and how her whole world is changing, all because we changed one idea and we changed her concentration from a negative thought to a positive thought.
That's amazing. That's amazing. See, I love your approach to all this because it's not narrow. And I also firmly believe that, a lot of the stress that we hold and a lot of the issues that we have with our neck and our muscle tension and all that really comes from the way we process our thoughts, the way we kind of, walk through our day, the way if we kind of take control over a negative thought or not, right? All these things kind of add up and build up. And I strongly believe in that because I've experienced it, right? When I was in a negative mindset, my back is tight, my shoulders are tight, my neck is hurting. I have these aches that I can't explain. But, and for me, it's more of my faith that gets me through it. But when I can pray in a sense and say, you know what, Lord, I'm in a place where I just can't get out of this funk. And I need a logical mindset. I need, and so on. And if I do that, I actually see a difference from the care that I'm receiving, whatever that care may be. So I strongly believe what you're saying as well. So I love that. All right. So go ahead. Did you have a follow-up?
Well, I can keep going on anything all the time. So you can take that and you can say, hey, there was someone that said, take every thought captive.
That's right.
Make it obedient to Christ. Okay. So you take that idea and then you go grab another idea that says the power of life and death is in your tongue.
That's right.
But when people say the power of life and death is in your tongue, before you can speak, you have to have an idea.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So you have to take every thought captive in there before it ever reaches that tongue, because that tongue is going to direct the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
And so it's literally said there, and there's laws that exist on the mental plane as well. And when we get shifted into a negative frame of mind, that comes because there's a law of rhythm I mean, just go look at the Gulf when I'm there. I go down there, you can see the waves coming and going. You can see the day and the night. The moon's going to come pretty soon. There's a rhythm that's built into just all of creation. It's built into seasons.
That's right.
And it's built into us. And so we will ebb and flow between the negative and the positive. It's when you're in that negative mindset, you got to ask yourself, what got me here?
Yeah.
Because if there's a creator that put this all together, then it's not an accident that I'm here right now. And I'm supposed to learn something from this. And then I can take that and move forward.
I love that. So, I can sit on this topic for the rest of the podcast, but we do not have that much time together. So I need to move on. But you know what? I'm loving how this conversation is going, and I feel like if we pick a topic and did a deep dive on it, we could fill an entire show with it. So we'll talk, man. We'll connect again after this. But okay. So I want to talk about the business and, of chiropractic and, scaling your practice. Yes, you're 2 years old ish, but you've also been doing this for a long time. So, running a practice isn't just about being a doctor.
Mhm.
You have to be a business owner too. So what were the biggest growing pains you faced when you were first starting out in the new practice in the one that you're currently in?
Yeah. So this will be my 16th year in practice, but it's only 2 years down here. And what I found out here was what worked for me in Minnesota didn't work for me here. So you really have to understand where you are and what reaches the community that you're in.
Right.
But the one thing that's held true is personal relationships always trump everything else.
Right.
And really investing in people as well as the things that you really love and enjoy doing.
Right. That's
So
good. Yeah. No, that's good.
and a business side, the biggest challenges was trying to figure out how to let people know you are where you are. Let them know you're there and you're available and open for business.
Yeah.
And it gets back to marketing, but it also depends on you got to decide before you start, who am I trying to attract?
Yeah. Right.
And
Oh, that's good.
everything in your practice should be structured around that idea of who am I trying to attract? Because I do see chiropractors out there, and this isn't a criticism of them, but it's one that comes to mind. I'll see Facebook ads for $19 new patient visit with adjustment.
Right.
And that always tells me you're looking to attract anyone that's out there, as long as they have a pulse. Maybe they don't, that doesn't matter. Come in with $19 and we'll take care of you.
Yeah.
I did the opposite approach, which was raise my prices. And because what I found early on in practice is that people that paid for care got better results.
Yeah.
If they had their money invested in it, they got better results. Now, that also limits how many people are going to come through your door initially, because you're going to be more expensive than the people that are around you.
Yep.
Which means you also have to bring the goods.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, obviously you can't just charge more and just do what everybody else is doing. So I agree with that. I love that. That's actually really good. It's also true in the business I'm in as well. You're not going to see ads out there from me that are like, $100 product. It's just not going to happen because one, I can't provide any kind of value with it, first and foremost. And two, you're going to get those looky-loos, right? That are just going to come in and window shop, pay you the $100 and say, oh, you suck. Like, you don't know what you're doing. It's the same concept. They're not invested. And also same result. When you have more skin in the game, it changes your mindset, your mentality. You become more invested. You ask more questions. You provide more detail, and so on. So I agree wholeheartedly with that approach. That's good. So how did you transition from again, the whole business owner, doctor aspect, right? And then there's the scaling of your business piece, right? So how do you transition from just treating patients to actually scaling your business?
So part of that comes with planning. So you got to sit down and go, where do I want my practice to be? What do I want it to look like?
Right.
And it started probably with the bigger question of, what do I want my life to look like? And then from there, it became, how many patients do I realistically want to see in a day? and what hours during the day do I feel at an elite level, I guess that you could say, where I'm at my top, I'm sharp.
Mhm.
And so that's how, so I structured my first, how many people do I want to see a week? That's going to be how many hours I'm going to work each day. And I'm going to put it off there. Was I there from day one? Heavens, no, that's not even logical. But I already built the structure that I wanted from the beginning. Now, it also means you have to adapt as you go. But I know exactly what my target is, what I'm trying to do, how long I'm going to spend with patients, what the process is going to look like. So, and then you start having to do things to attract the patients that you're looking for.
Mhm.
And sometimes that means trying something and it might not work. I mean, I've tried advertising this in places and it doesn't work, and it's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
And then you try other things, but that's where the adaptation comes in. You figure out, where do the people that I attract come from?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then
That's
once
good.
you figure out where that is, then it's like, okay, well, then I just put more money and more time and effort in those channels to
Sure.
assist them to get here.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Yeah. Don't kind of blanket your efforts based on a failure of a certain approach, right? So, because marketing is challenging to begin with, marketing in healthcare is even a bigger challenge, in my opinion. What would you say worked best for you in growing Blue Waters?
It was a twofold approach. One is just getting out and meeting people,
Yeah.
really just being authentic and meeting people, and you just sharing my story and listening to them and providing realistic feedback on how I can help them. The other thing is, down here is Facebook. There's a lot of Facebook groups, and my wife does a dynamite job of being on there and promoting me when I'm not looking at those things. And we found that that was a very effective way to let people know that we're here and that we can help you, and we got a different approach that other people aren't doing. That's been our most effective way. And really, really free. We really haven't put a lot of money into it. We didn't have to. And then since then, it's allowed us, as it grows, to, okay, now we have some revenue to start trying some other areas and grow it even further.
Hmm. And then did you find that digital marketing enhanced that? Or did it like fail in the sense that failed so much that you took a break, went back to the ways that worked, or did you just do in-person community outreaches? Because like how did you complement your Facebook and then your in-person stuff with the digital marketing?
Well, we went to, they have different networking groups. So you get involved in a networking group and you meet other business owners because they know other like minded individuals. And then it's on Facebook, reaching out to people that are in different groups that are looking for things. And then from there, it's put an ad out there just to try to get your name out there and see it. And then you just try different areas to see what works.
Hmm.
You look at your numbers. The crazy part that I found is, I had an ad run on Facebook. I had 0 people come in from that ad, but I got busier.
Mm.
And what people often associate is, they want something to come directly from the thing they're doing. But if they step back and look at the practice as a whole and the business as a whole and be like, your business is improving. And because when I shut the ad off for a 2-week period, things started to slow a little bit. And then I rewrote something and turned it back on and it got busy again. And I still have 0 people from that ad.
That's
But I
funny.
notice when it runs, because it's creating a vibration through the law of vibration, and then it still attracts people in.
Yeah. So you're big on patient education, at least from the things that I've been seeing from you online. What's your approach to keeping patients engaged, kind of outside of the office?
Well, I'll use different tools. So there's a book called Rays of the Dawn by Dr. Thurman Fleet. And he goes through the 4 laws of the body, and then he goes through what he calls the laws of the mind and the soul, which are negative and positive emotions. And with that, I actually got asked to help edit that book to its newest current version that's going to come out. So that's kind of a
I
cool thing.
Yes.
And that's going to be
Yeah.
coming out later this spring. And so hopefully later this spring. So I'll use that book with my patients, and I'll give them, if there's someone that they've had a lot of fear, like if someone's started a new practice and they're very fearful of that, there's a chapter on fear and its opposite is faith. Now I'll tell them, go home and read that chapter on fear and start to balance this emotion out so you can weed through all the junk in your world and start to calm that muscle contraction down so your body will hold that better and you can get in a more positive frame of mind.
Got it.
So I'll use things
Yeah.
like that. I have things called zone sheets where they read things pertaining to how their health's going to improve, diet changes. So there's lots of little things like that. And then I try to put out a lot of content on social media, which a lot of my patients, because that's where they found me, they're watching and listening to.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think social media is critical. Facebook, even though it feels like the old people platform now, the Facebook, and I would say is number one for chiropractors. Instagram would be number two. Now, Instagram, you'll get the younger communities, and Facebook, you'll get the older communities, but those are the two kind of main ones for a DC. And from what I'm seeing and from my experience, are the two that you should focus on if you want that steady flow, steady following. If a brand new chiropractor came to you today and said, what's the one thing I should focus on first to build a successful practice? Like, what would you tell them?
Change yourself.
Tell me more.
I'll expand on that because I had to think about it for a second. I would be willing to change yourself because you have to evolve as a person to become a better healer. And that's one of my dreams here is to have, and that's what will happen in the future here, is to have other doctors come in here out of school or very new and then teach them how to do this. But they have to be willing to evolve themselves. And so what that means is you're going to run into patients that are difficult or that you don't get a result on. And you're going to have to ask, or you're going to have to say, I don't know. Goes back to that. And then you're going to have to concentrate and figure out a solution. So now you're starting to see how these things are all relevant to what I do. And then you have to be willing to change, hey, I used this technique. I used this supplement. I did whatever it was and it didn't work. And you have to face a lot of your own junk in order to do that, which means you have to exercise every day, which means you have to eat the diet that you're preaching to your patients, means you have to go to bed and get your rest, means you have to make sure that your sanitation, you're taking showers and you're got your bowels straight. You have to have all these things in line and be doing them. Now, do they have to be perfect? No, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you're someone that has had a lot of bowel issues and that's why you got into chiropractic, it doesn't mean that it has to be perfect, but you're willing to do the things necessary and work on yourself to try to get it perfect, which it can, or be willing to change. But if you're going to walk in with a terrible diet and tell someone, well, you need to change your diet, it's like, well, I see you eating McDonald's right now. It loses this vibration with the patients, this vibe with them, that it just becomes off as insincere.
Sure. Yeah. That's actually a great segue into kind of the next topic I want to cover, because to me, change is the only constant in life. And if we're not always changing, we're stagnant. And if we're stagnant, we're walking backwards and we're just not advancing forward. And I associate change with the future, because if we're not constantly changing and evolving, again, standing still, but if we are, and we're open to changing ourselves, our thought patterns, understanding things better and so on, we're actually working towards a better future. So that said, I want to kind of shift our conversation into the future of healthcare and chiropractic. So first question I have for you is regarding functional and integrative medicine. I know we said that it's a wide, yes, but more in the sense of where is it heading, like in the next decade? Where do you see the future of it?
So the word that you're looking for that came to my mind was becoming. You're either becoming healthy or becoming more sick. Where I see medicine heading or becoming, you're going to see AI come in and be able to do what a lot of medical doctors can do. And my personal opinion, and I could be totally wrong, is that we're going to see AI take over a lot of these doctor visits. And it's because they can load in a patient's total history and they can load in every study that's ever done. and then have someone come in and type in a couple things, and they won't even have to type at that point because it'll be voice recognition. They'll come in and they can even talk to a computer that's loaded that way, and they'll have a doctor overseeing 10 different computers and just quickly review it and make sure it's not crazy, and then send. And you won't even really sit down and talk to them much anymore because they'll depend on AI. That leaves chiropractic in a fantastic position because AI cannot adjust the neck. AI cannot adjust the lumbar. With that said, chiropractic has always been we have many factions within chiropractic. We have people that want to do more physical therapy rehab. We have people that a big push seems to be to get a lot of these DRX 9000 machines and just get low back paid people and get them to sign up and then just help them out, which is great. You can have a nice practice that way, but they're just focused on lower back. And then you have a population that wants to get into drugs and treatment like that, which I don't agree with. And I don't think drugs should ever be in chiropractic. It's the antithesis of what we actually do. And then you get into supplements, and you have a lot of practitioners that are going to just supplement. But to me, they need to get back to what is the root of chiropractic? And that's just to actually adjust the person, just to adjust the spine. And a lot of these groups, I only see it becoming more varied. We're going to see more variation in chiropractic, more different things that come out. We'll see different modalities, different things, and it'll just keep getting into smaller and smaller factions.
Right.
What they all need to look and recognize if they really want to move everything forward is, look, the basis of what we do is adjusting.
Mm-hmm.
Even if someone does supplements, guess what? Adjusting's first, supplement is second. When I treat people, adjusting's first, supplement is second. And I always tell people, I don't need the IUP to get you better. IUP just allows me to see things differently to make it go faster.
Yeah. And I think more and more people are looking for that natural kind of healthcare solution.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I'm seeing the shift is as far as chiropractic care, a holistic, natural approach to, and solutions for things, problems that we have, and so on. I think that's where we're headed. But do you think that it would ever be mainstream? Do you think it would eventually become mainstream?
It might take a longer time for that to happen, but COVID was a big waking up time. To be honest, COVID was a big question because here you had a mainstream medical community that argued that they're 100% scientific and there's never any fraud in it at all, saying that they magically have a vaccine after 4 months after it's created with all the safety testing.
Right.
Like that bypassed all logical reason. And they said it was 100% safe and effective. Now, this isn't even me interjecting my thoughts. This is just literally what they said.
Yep.
But it's not logical that could happen because their other vaccines take 10 years to develop before they come to a market. So if you just do a simple comparison, you're like, this doesn't make logical sense why this could happen. And that, in what it does on a mental plane, is the self-preservation urge that's already heightened because of COVID now makes all these people that it's heightened now get fear of, wait a second, this didn't go through a normal testing process. How is this safe for me? It invokes fear. Now fear places distrust in the entire medical community as a whole. And they start to question, well, why am I on this medication? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Why am I going in every year? And whenever they start to ask questions, you generally get your answers. And so now they're wondering why I'm putting poisons and toxins in my body when I can be using more natural meat. What's more natural in chiropractic? I can't think of it because you don't put anything unnatural in your body.
Right.
And so it's a nice shift that's happening. I'm seeing it more and more. I think it will continue that way. And that's a very good thing to get back to innate intelligence, doing what it does, that heal, repair body.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So big question. What's next for Blue Waters Health Center? Like any exciting new services, big plans on the horizon?
So Blue Waters, it was named Blue Waters Health Center because I wanted to eventually become what it will become is a place where people can come to when they have crap they can't figure out. And with that, it's going to become a place where I teach the IMDCs how to do this. But in the meantime, I'm continually growing and expanding that. The next step is really just really new is the creation of a Facebook group called CT Applied for Healers. And what that is concept therapy applied. A lot of what I do is concept therapy work that Dr. Thurman Fleet, he started that back in 1931. He had a very big movement and he died in 1983. And it's using his work and his approach. And I owe a lot to the way I think and the way I process and how I treat patients to his method. And so it's to teach people when you have a patient come in, you got to figure out, is this a trauma induced? Is it chemical induced? Is it emotional induced? And then what to do next. And realizing that in the back of all of it is suggestion that really kind of gets things moving. And to teach people how to utilize that in a clinical setting, in a real world experience. It's kind of like my patient that had her just kind of surgery and deformity in her eye there. I used suggestion to give her a different idea, and that allowed now the adjustments to hold and her to get better. So it's a Facebook group that's designed to help people to see, like, how do I do this in a real world setting so I don't get frustrated with my patients?
Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay. I love where you're headed. And I think the ultimate kind of goal, or where I believe you're going to end up based on what you're telling me, is going to create a much larger impact, not just your community, but communities, across the US, because you're going to be training DCs to do this, and they're going to go off and do it in other areas of the country, other areas of the world. So I love where you're going with this. All right. If you had unlimited resources today, I gave you a blank check. Here you go, Dr. Mike, to invest in your practice today. What's the first thing you'd implement?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Because honestly, I love the practice I have right now. And I love the growth and the way it's going. A lot of people think that they want explosive growth, but I had a mentor tell me, Dr. Shar Maddox had told me that, and he's not even a chiropractor. And he told me when I started this business, he said, well, things that grow fast in nature tend to be weeds. And what do people do with weeds? They pull them and they die. He said, you want to be like an oak tree. You want to establish your roots. You want to grow nice and slow because they last for long periods of time and they're strong.
Yep.
And so when I look at it, it's like, if I had all the money, what would I do different? Well, the only thing would be advertise more, but then that would draw in more people, which would be great and what I ultimately want. But then the question becomes, well, am I ready for 200-300 people a week?
Right.
Probably not. I don't have the systems in place yet.
Right.
And it bypasses the natural growth. And you want the natural growth in the practice to be able to catch all the little hiccups in the way, all the little thorns that you might encounter in order to create a nice, smooth process. So when you get to the place that you want to be, all your processes and your systems are there, and you can handle it without any trouble. And it's the next logical step along the way.
Yeah, I love that. I wholeheartedly agree with every word that you just said, specifically about the weeds and the oak tree, because that's exactly how I built my business. Laying the foundation of something, or like, think about a house, right? When you're building a house, if that foundation isn't strong, if it isn't built right, it's not going to stand for long, if at all. And then also the foundation and the structure takes a lot longer, right? Once you see that foundation go in, all of a sudden a house appears, right? Towards the tail end of that build process. It's the same thing with a tree. The roots take forever. Like it's a longer process for the roots to kind of sit themselves in that ground and grow out and wide so that it can hold itself up when it starts to grow. And it's the same thing with a business. It's the same thing with anything that we do, honestly. If we're trying to get quick results, weight loss, for example, I've experienced it. The quicker I lose weight, the quicker I gain it back. But when I'm on a regimen, the right diet, we'll call it, I hate that word, but if I'm eating the right things and I'm going, which is what I'm doing currently, actually, I'm in a health program with my chiropractor, but I notice a very slow progress, but it's sticking. It's creating a better foundation, a healthier body, no fog, all that stuff. So I wholeheartedly agree with what you just said, but love that. All right. What keeps you inspired, right? Because it sounds like you have this motivation to keep going, keep innovating and growing your practice. What keeps you inspired?
The question that started all of this, what heals?
Mm,
When a doctor, practitioner of any sort truly looks inside and says, what heals, and realize that they have no freaking clue, then they're actually free.
yeah.
Because you can allow to come in what truly heals. Because there's a lot of people that says, oh, this supplement, this does it. Okay, well, you get this supplement and they're like, take calcium, it goes in. You can see the action it does in the body, but it doesn't heal. It in itself doesn't heal. And then you look at an adjustment. Does adjustment in itself heal? Well, you put a bone back in alignment. Well, and something else has to take over for it to heal. And so when you really ask yourself what heals, and you start looking at that, and you start to understand and just get a glimpse of what it actually is.
Mhm.
I mean, that'll keep you busy for a lifetime. And then
Yeah.
you try to figure out how you can do it better and better and better. And that's what it is. For me, it's a never ending game
Yeah.
of how can I help someone heal faster and better from what they have and change their whole world.
Love that. Love that. All right. So then how can listeners connect with you if they want to learn more? Maybe a DC wants to reach out, or maybe somebody wants to book an appointment. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So if you're wanting to book an appointment, the easiest way is you can go on bluewatershealthcenter.com, and there's a big book appointment right there. This big button there, hit that. It'll take you to my page to do that. And you can, if you're someone that's virtual and you're like, hey, I've never heard of this IUP, I could ship it to you, and we can run one in a different state, and
Oh,
we
that's
can
cool.
run it, and we can treat you just nutritionally from a different state. If you have a great chiropractor you're working with and they don't run it, we can do it that way too. So that's kind of a neat little thing that we can do, is nutrition from a distance too. But if you just want to reach out, you have a question, comment, moral outrage. No, I'm kidding on that last part. Or you're a new DC or even an older one. You have questions about anything. Find me on Facebook. You can go to Blue Waters Health Center on Facebook. Go to my personal page too. Either one's fine. I'm on Instagram, Blue Waters Health Center there. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I mean, so find any way you can, and you can reach out, and I'll answer your questions. I help. I have different DCs that reach out to me with stuff all the time. There's you got to give. It's an idea of generosity. You don't ever want to take your information, just stifle it. And so of all the stuff, one of my mentors, Shar Maddox, he's been a really big influence in my life and is also how I practice now. And he's not even a DC. And the amount of conversations I've had with him over the past 5 years, and he's never charged me a dime, never once. And I take that same idea that if someone is truly seeking, if they're truly looking for answers or help, I'll bend over backwards to help you any way I can, because you're honest and you're sincere. I'm not going to charge you anything. There's some DCs out there that want to charge you an arm and a leg just to have a phone conversation. Get off your high horse and come down and talk with the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Thanks for that's blunt, but it's so true. That's awesome. I love that you said that. Okay. So we talked about concentration earlier. So I have another challenge question for you. So we're going to kind of stack a little bit. So for anyone looking to take control of their health today, like what's one habit they can start today that will make a massive difference over time? So concentration, right? We're going to concentrate. We're going to work on that. What's something else?
Well, I could walk you through how I look at food, because this can change how you eat immediately. And I'll explain it just like I'm explaining it to my patients. So there's a law of nourishment. I always go over it on my second visit with patients, because it's the one that's the most violated. And so this comes directly out of Dr. Thurman's Fleet's book, Raising the Dawn. There's 4 categories to this law of nourishment, 4 categories of food. Now, these are big, broad pictures, but we're looking at how food changes you, not necessarily is it good or bad, just how it changes you when you eat it. Because food isn't just fuel, it fundamentally changes us and who we are. So we look at the first category. The first category is builders. Builders are going to be all your proteins and your dairy products. So your chicken and your beef and your fish and your dairy products fall in that category. That's generally going to be your builders. So think of it like building a house. If you don't have any 2x4s or any steel or anything like that, you have no structure to build it from. The second category are your eliminators. Now, your eliminators are things that pull waste out of your body. They dissolve your fluids. So think of it going in after the builders. And the builders created this nice, beautiful house, but they left all these little pieces all over. They go in, they pick up all these pieces and take them out. That's all your fruits and vegetables, but not your corn, potatoes, or bananas. They're a little too starchy for that. And then your third category, those are your lubricators. Think of Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz, if you ever seen that movie. You don't have oil, it doesn't work. You get oil changes in your car, otherwise everything seizes up. If you ever put oil on your hands, it's nice and smooth. We need oils in our body to help those joints move. That's your olive oil, avocado oil, nuts and seeds, avocados themselves. And the last category is your congestors. If you ever been congested and you've been plugged up or you're in traffic and congested, it's just not moving. So if you're all congested and plugged up, those foods, a part of that category, are cookies, candy, soda, alcohol, crackers, pastas, breads. All those things fall in that category. See, none of the categories are bad. But when you look at a plate, you can instantly know how that body's going to change or how that food is going to change you. Because if you get a burger, fries, and a drink, you have two congestors, a builder, congester fry, congester drink. What's it going to do? It's going to build you up and plug you up. And so now you have a visual picture of how food changes you when you eat it. So if you have a steak, asparagus, and strawberries, you know that that meal is going to build you, take away all your waste, and you're going to feel better when you eat it. And that is a tip that everyone could have right now going, now when I look at a plate, I know what it's going to do to me. I know that I want 1/3 builders, 2/3 eliminators, use your lubricators, and you will be healthy.
I freaking love that, man. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. I've never looked at food that way. So that's pretty cool. The good thing I have a recording of it. So I'm going to go back and watch this again and take even more detailed notes. So I appreciate that, man.
What would be amazing? Yeah, what would be amazing is you'll think about it later and you'll be able to remember it because I put such good pictures in there.
Yeah,
that it does
that's what I'm saying. That's what I love, the visuals.
So, and then when you look at, now I didn't say the congestors were bad. And that's what a lot of people think. They're like, it's bad. I said, no, it's not bad. I love pizza. You want to talk pizza? We could have a whole podcast about pizza. Which is the better kind? Detroit or Chicago or Margarita or New Haven, New York. I mean, I love pizza.
Yeah.
I'm not going to quit eating it, but I know it's largely a congestor. But when you know it's a congestor, it's going to plug you up. You can immediately go, what do I need to do in order to balance out the congestion? Well, I need lubricators and eliminators to get rid of it. So then you know, oh, well, I should eat my fruits and my vegetables so I can balance out this congestor I put into it.
Right.
And then now you can balance your food and you can maintain health.
That's so cool. I love that. Well, Dr. Mike, I mean, this has been awesome. Thanks again, man, for taking the time out to chat with me here and just dump a lot of knowledge on us here. Really.
Oh yeah, no, this is fun. I enjoyed this. I love getting and talking and sharing stories and just giving people a different perspective on chiropractic, that what has really been out there or what they've been presented with in school. Because oftentimes in school, they're presented with such a medical approach that they forget that there's a person there and they're hurting. And they really don't care how you get them better as long as you get them better.
Yeah, we covered everything from chiropractic to functional medicine, from patient education to scaling, right? A successful practice. I gotta say, if more doctors took the approach that Dr. Mike does, we'd all be walking around with better posture and a whole lot fewer mystery symptoms, in my opinion. But Dr. Mike, thanks for sharing your expertise today. And for everyone listening, if this episode opened your eyes in a different way of thinking about health, don't just sit on it. Take action. Whether that's getting an adjustment, running some labs, finding somebody that actually runs this IUP, or reaching out to Dr. Mike and asking him for the test. He was just telling us that he'll ship it to you. Drinking more water, whatever it is, take action. Your future self will thank you. I promise you. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, hit that like button wherever you're watching this, and follow us and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay aligned, stay healthy, and stay curious.